Dr. Donna Willis. Dr. Willis, if you can just give us all a wave so we can all see who you are. That's Dr. Willis. Thank you for being with us today. You have I would say the esteemed honor of kicking us off and kicking off this series. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Donna Willis Iden, who is a medical educator and of the faculty at Johns Hopkins. And her presentation today is entitled COVID-19, Heart, Body, and Spirit. And she's going to be talking to us about the vaccine for COVID-19. What next? How do we improve our physical wellness and build resistance? And then there will be Q&A. Now, Dr. Donna Willis Iden is the same Dr. Donna from The View and The Operations. She is in the faculty, as I said, at Johns Hopkins Medicine and currently resides in Lyon, France. As a medical educator, she builds bridges in international medical education and STEM education. Dr. Donna Willis Iden, we welcome you. We thank you for being with us, and we would want to give you a virtual round of applause, and we look forward to hearing what you have to share with us today. Dr. Donna, over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a little late in France. It's 6 hours difference. So it's close to 10 o'clock. But despite the hour, I wanted to be here. Why? Because COVID-19 is a problem that affects primarily people of color, and the problem is spiraling out of control. Some people are facing not only the infection, but their family members die. Some beat the deadly part of the infection, but they develop a disability. They're called the long haulers. And then others, like us, we're not infected, but we're facing this public health crisis, and it's global. So that's why I'm here. In France, starting tonight, there's a curfew for everyone at 6 p.m. No one on the streets, believe it or not. None of the cities, none of the villages. Everybody is inside, 6 o'clock at night. Everyone has to wear a mask. No excuses. And if you don't, strike 3, you could be subject to jail time. There's also penalties and fines for the first infraction, and they double and triple afterwards. Why? The healthcare system cannot sustain. And that's why this presentation is important also. The health, not only can we not personally sustain it, but the healthcare system cannot sustain it. And if it gets overcrowded, they have to ration care. So I'm going to focus this afternoon for you and evening for me on 4 questions. Why do the COVID vaccines matter to each of us? What do experts say about the immune system and the COVID-19? 3, how do COVID-19 vaccines work? 4, if you take the COVID-19 vaccine, what will happen? Then I'm going to take your questions. But first, a little video that highlights what the USA and France have in common. They share some very close similarities. If you could roll the tape, Naomi.
peut-être des effets secondaires qu'on ne connaît pas encore, comme le vaccin de la grippe normale. Hein. On cherche un vaccin à tout prix rapidement, mais c'est pas pour ça qu'il est encore, qu'il peut être vraiment efficace. Enfin, on n'en sait rien pour l'instant, donc je prendrai pas le risque, ça c'est sûr.
Donc on a en France une acceptation de la vaccination en général qui est plus faible qu'à l'étranger, et sur le Covid encore plus. On remarque que déjà il y a un facteur d'âge, donc plus les personnes sont vieilles, plus elles ont tendance à vouloir se faire vacciner. Il y a un facteur de genre également, puisque les femmes consentent moins au vaccin que les hommes, et surtout une des raisons importantes du refus de la vaccination, c'est la forte défiance envers les institutions politiques, et la défiance aussi par rapport aux scientifiques.
S'ils veulent pas le faire, mais moi je le ferai parce que j'ai 66 ans, je suis une personne dans la fragilité de ma santé et je le ferai.
C'est très franco-français de ne pas mettre le masque, de mettre le masque, de tout refuser en première instance et puis après tout le monde va s'y faire. Je pense que tout le monde va le faire. Je pense qu'on n'a pas le choix non plus.
Vaccine hesitancy is a problem in France. France is the #1 country where people don't want to take the vaccine. They kind of mirror people of color. And even in the United States, there also have a high rate of people who are hesitant to take the vaccine. Part of the reason that they've been hesitant is because of all the misinformation that has been circulating. It's been circulating on TV, but it's also been circulating mostly in social media, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. It's full of misinformation. And no wonder a lot of people are leery of getting vaccinated. But there's a problem if you don't get vaccinated. If you don't get vaccinated, the pandemic is going to last longer. More people are going to die. So before I get into some of the nitty-gritty about the science of the COVID-19 vaccines, I want you to ask a few questions. I'm going to share with you some questions that I ask individuals. Do you have any medical conditions? Heart, lung, diabetes? Are you African American, Latinx, or multiracial? Do you know someone who has died from COVID-19? Are you older than 60? Do you want to return to being with your friends and family? Do you want to return to church, eating out, and going places without fear? Now, if you answered yes to any one of those questions, the COVID vaccines are for you. If you want to return to your family, if you want to go out to eat, if you want to just do some things without fear, the only way we can do it without fear is with herd immunity. What is herd immunity? Herd immunity means if there's none, this individual infects a lot of people. But if there is herd immunity, the little people in green, they'll never get the infection. And the safest way to get there quickly and safely is with the vaccine. 75 to 80% of the US population, that's 265 to 280 million people, must have antibodies in order to achieve this herd immunity. Now, if we do it without the vaccines, at the death rate that's going on now in the United States, 2.5 to 3 million people will die instead of the almost already 400,000 people who've died. So I ask you, vaccine or no vaccine? Fear or faith? Facts or fiction? What are you listening to? Who are you listening to? Well, tonight I hope you're listening to me, because I'm going to share with you some facts. What do the experts say? Well, let's just take another peek at what the virus looks like. Now, everyone's seen this little spiky thing. By now, you can almost draw it yourself. It's like a little golf ball with a lot of little points sticking up on it that are curlicues. It's these things on the circle with the globe that most of the vaccines are targeting. Now, if you look at this spike, and then you look at the anatomy of the spike, this is what most of the vaccines are trying to block, because the infection of the virus attaches to the receptor on the cell. It's like a door, lock, and a key. So here's the virus. Now, if you have antibodies blocking these little red spikes, then it can't attach to the receptors. And that is the goal. The goal of immunity is to develop these little green antibodies. Well, they're not green in your body, but for the sake of it, imagine them as green in your body. Green for go, green for great, green for good. These vaccines help your body to create your own cellular immunity. So I have a little video of animation to drive this point home that I want you to see. It will show you the adaptation phase.
The adaptive immune system provides a more targeted defense. One special type of cell is the dendritic cell. This cell is like an intelligence specialist. When a germ invades, the dendritic cell collects pieces of it. The cell travels to a lymph node nearby. Here, a cascade of events begins. Inside the lymph node, the dendritic cell shows pieces of the invader to T cells. T cells are the immune system's communications team. In turn, T cells train B cells to make antibodies. These molecular weapons can target a specific invader. The immune system now mounts its next defense. B cells release millions of antibodies, each antibody shaped to identify a specific enemy. B cells send out antibodies until they wipe out the infection. In this way, the body adapts to new germs. By mounting targeted defenses, it is able to fend off most diseases.
Now you're all experts. You're all experts on your immune system. You're looking to create, and you're looking for the opportunity by taking a vaccine to create antibodies that block the virus so that it doesn't get inside your cells. And then if you're vaccinated, your immune system, if it is exposed to it again, says, oh, I remember you. Oh, no, 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 no. No entrance here. Blocked. Blocked. But there are different ways to achieve this. And you've heard talk about the Moderna vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Do you know there are more than 250 biotech companies that are creating vaccines? The Moderna and Pfizer vaccines were quick because it's based on innovative technology. Most people think, oh, that's too soon, that's too fast. How did they do that within months? Well, it hasn't been months. This research began in 1960. In fact, a woman started the research in memory RNA. And for the last 30 years, they have been trying to develop not only vaccines, but they've tried to develop other treatments against cancer, heart disease, diabetes, because a lot of the problems that we're facing now is not only infections, but chronic diseases. So let me share with you the 4 categories of vaccines that are being developed. I'm going to share my little screen with you. Some of the vaccines actually use a virus. Some, the virus particles, or an inactive virus. Because if they introduce that into your body, you would technically not get sick. The nucleic acid vaccines are based upon DNA and RNA. The viral vectors take a little piece and put it in something so that it can go into your body. You know about the vector. The vector viral vaccines are what we have with regard to measles, mumps, and rubiola. You're not afraid for your children to take the MMR. Well, they're doing the same thing for COVID. The messenger RNA is the newest technology. The beauty of the messenger RNA, here's the best description that I have of the messenger RNA. We send emails all the time, right? You send an email. Well, in this case, the messenger RNA sends an email to your cell, into the cytoplasm, not into the nucleus. It doesn't change your DNA. It sends a little email, little message. We've got to prepare for this new protein coming. It sends that message into the cell. Once it takes up the message, just like a Snapchat, it disappears. It's not lingering in your body. It disappears. Once the message is received in the cell, it begins to produce the kinds of proteins necessary for the body to react and to create antibodies. The live attenuated virus, well, if you haven't had polio, you've taken a polio vaccine. It's a live attenuated. They decrease the strength of the virus so that they can inject it. The other is the protein subunit. They take a little bit of the protein from the virus, they mix it up with some adjuvants, and they create so that when they inject the vaccine, your body creates more antibody, because if it's just to the protein, there's not enough to develop a strong immune reaction. Now, not everyone, but most of us know of the flu vaccine. Those vaccines are developed from the protein subunits. Oops, got away from me there. Let's go back. I just want to compare the Pfizer and the BioNTech COVID vaccines. These are RNA, virus genetic code. The measles is a live attenuated, meaning they decrease the power of the virus. And then the flu vaccine is it's inactivated. For the Pfizer and the BioNTech, you have to have 2 injections, 21 to 28 days apart. Measles, the same. You took your child to get a vaccine. They didn't go to school without it. It requires a booster too. And then the flu vaccine, you get it once a year because they have to keep changing the virus because the virus mutates a bit. And we've all heard about the temperature requirements. -80 for the Pfizer, not so low for the Moderna, and 2 to 8 centigrades for the other vaccines, which we can put in most refrigerators. This slide tells you how many companies are creating these numbers of vaccines in development. Most people are developing the protein-based. Those are the typical types of vaccines that we all know about. The nucleic acid and the viral vectors, we know about those. Those are typical. But really, most countries are hoping that the protein-based vaccines show good results because most of the time they're cheaper. They've had a lot of experience with them. They don't require a lot of refrigeration problems, and they're easier to distribute. The biggest question mark that many have also had is, okay, how many people did they really test this on? I mean, they really just jumped out of the gun with these vaccines. But no, they didn't. Johnson & Johnson had 60,000 people. And you have to prove over 3 months that they didn't have any catastrophic or other problems beside the typical side effects. The AstraZeneca, 50,000. The Novavax, which is coming on board soon in Britain, is 45,000. They're no small studies. And now that many of the vaccines, for example, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines, have been given the green light to be given to individuals, there's a big population. Yes, some people say, well, I don't want to be a part of a study group. Well, the problem is you can either be in the study group or you can be in the group that has a higher risk of contracting the virus. Now, when I say the study group, am I saying that that people don't really know what's going to happen? All I'm saying here is that thus far we know that they're safe. Yes, there have been some individuals who have had severe allergic reactions, but those allergic reactions are easily treatable. There has been one person who had a severe reaction that wasn't allergic, and that individual died. But you have to look at this over risk and benefits. Now, before we discuss the risk and benefits, I would like to show you another video that summarizes the 4 different vaccines. Naomi? The video of the next vaccine.
All right, give me just 1 second here. My PowerPoint seems to have flown away from me.
Want me to try to load it from my end?
There we go, we found, thank you.
Okay.
The adaptive immune system provides a more targeted defense.
After that.
One special type of cell
All COVID-19 vaccines being developed aim to produce immunity to the SARS-CoV-2 virus by stimulating an immune response to an antigen, usually the characteristic spike protein found on the surface of the virus. Some traditional vaccines achieve this by modifying the virus to weaken or disable it, so that when introduced to the body, an immune response can be generated to the antigen, without the virus causing disease. When the immune system comes into contact with the weakened virus, its defences, such as antibodies and T cells, attack the virus or infected cells. In the process, specialised memory cells take note of the specific antigen and prime the immune system to produce cells and antibodies that will quickly target these proteins. So the next time that person is exposed to the same virus, the immune system is ready to fight it off. Instead of using the whole virus, another way to trigger immunity involves using just fragments of it, like the spike proteins. These subunit vaccines have the advantage of being relatively easy and cheap to produce, and are incapable of causing disease because these fragments are not able to infect host cells. However, they are less likely to be recognised by immune cells aimed at attacking infected cells, which means they may trigger a weaker immune response. Because of this, subunit vaccines often include chemical agents called adjuvants, which are designed to stimulate a stronger immune response, and booster shots may also be required. Not all vaccines are designed to introduce antigens to the body. Some work by using cells in a patient's body to produce the antigens themselves. Examples include viral vector vaccines and mRNA vaccines. In both cases, the goal is to get a short fragment of genetic code taken from the target pathogen, in this case the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19, into the patient's cells. By hijacking the cellular mechanisms, these kinds of vaccines mimic the way viruses normally reproduce during natural infection, but rather than creating copies of the virus, the cells only produce large amounts of antigen that then usually trigger a strong immune response. Viral vector vaccines achieve this by inserting the genetic code for the antigen into a harmless virus, which effectively acts like a delivery system to get the code into the cells without causing disease. Vector-based vaccines can be complex to develop, but they can trigger strong immune responses without the need for adjuvants. And in theory, one type of vector can be used to deliver code for a range of different antigens, which can speed up vaccine development. Nucleic acid vaccines, like mRNA and DNA vaccines, also involve inserting genetic code into cells to produce antigens. But instead of using viruses to deliver the code, these vaccines take a more direct approach that involves inserting the code directly into cells, either by attaching it to a molecule or by forcing it into cells using a gene gun. These vaccines can be quick and cheap to develop, but they are a relatively new technology. With hundreds of COVID-19 vaccines now in development, it's likely that a mixture of different approaches will be needed in order to stop the global spread of this coronavirus and end the pandemic.
If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 1,000,000. So you have in mind the 4 types. Have you chosen the one that you prefer? There's going to be a test at the end. I'm going to ask you all the 4. No, not really. But nevertheless, everything that I do as a physician with a patient is based upon risk and benefits. Everything that you do in life is based upon risk and benefits. You walked out of the door this morning, you got in your car, you drove, you took a risk because you could get hit. You didn't know if there was a truck that was going to come, but the benefit of getting in your car to go wherever you wanted to go, or the benefit of eating the food that you do, instead of saying, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of something in that food. I don't think I can eat that. It's too risky. But you eat because you say to yourself, I think, I don't know where and who grew this. I don't know who packaged or where it was packaged, but I'm going to accept that the benefit of eating this is worth the risk of not knowing everything about what I'm eating. It's the same with the vaccines. You have to ask yourself, is the benefit of no fear worth the vaccine? Is the benefit of going out, being with family, friends, going to church, traveling, going wherever you want to go, hugging again? Is it worth the risk of some potential side effects? Let's think about it. Let's just think about that for a minute. You got to look at those risks. It's like little devils. You don't want a big devil. You'll take the risk of the little devils. But the big devil, you say, ooh, if there's a lot of big devils, we'll call big devil death. I won't take the risk if I believe there are too many people dying. But I may take the risk if they're not that, they're typical side effects. I may take that risk because the benefit of the vaccine, the benefit for my life, my well-being, my mental health, my physical health, my spiritual health. Yes, your spiritual health. Because when you're anxious, it sort of challenges your spirituality. A physician friend of mine said to me, one of the things that she would tell her patients was the following. She would say to them, in the United States and in most developed countries, people of color are at the highest risk of not only contracting the disease, but dying from it. Would you prefer to increase your layer of protectivity? Or would you live in fear because you've heard that this or that or this or that, and no one really can tell you? Yes, these drugs and vaccines have been authorized on emergency use, but that doesn't mean that this emergency use means that you're going to the emergency room. It means that the emergency is so great that the benefit of the vaccine, based upon the safety data that we already have, and that's 7 months of safety data, is worth some of the unknowing. Well, this thing is going faster than me. Okay, let's go back. But I'm going to give you a few tools. You can go on the internet to the New York Times, and you can find your place in the vaccine line. Now, when you find your place in the vaccine line, basically they're doing a risk analysis. So you could Google New York Times, find your place in the vaccine line. And what this risk tool does, it asks you a few questions. I put my data in. It says, how old are you? What country do you live in? What kind of work do you do? Do you have any health risk? Takes you through a bunch of little questionnaires. And when you take this little survey, this decision-making tool, this risk tool, you get to learn a few things about what's true and factual and what's not factual. What it gives you, this is where I am. I put my residence for Silver Spring because that's where I used to live. And as a healthcare provider, that's me, the red person. So I'm not first in line, but I'm pretty high up there because of what I do as a physician. Now you'll put your information in there and you'll find exactly where you are in line. My younger cousins did it and said, well, I'm at the back of the bus. I thought Rosa Parks got us to the front of the bus. I said, well, if you're young, you're not a high-risk person. Another tool is made by Johns Hopkins. If you type in Johns Hopkins COVID mortality risk calculator, you will also be taken through a decision. They'll ask you a bunch of questions. They're not asking you your name or anything like that. And they'll give you if you are high, medium, or low. You can also look at the calendar, not the calendar, but the map. I think I'm getting a little sleepy, a little tired. It's my little tongue is getting stuck in my mouth. But those are the two tools that you can use to discover what your risks are. Okay, so finally, I want to show you something else. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. I didn't tell you the side effects because I know you know them, but I'll repeat them. Everyone who's had a vaccination knows the side effects, and they're the typical side effects. There have been more than 6 million shots given around the world. Out of that, to date, that I know, may have changed today because I haven't looked, only one person's died, and that one's under autopsy to see if there were other comorbidities or other factors involved. There's pain at the injection site. You get little aches and chills and may have a little low-grade temperature, and you may have some fatigue. It's temporary. Now, these symptoms will increase and intensify when you get the booster shot. So most people say, oh, that was nothing. First shot, boom. They get the booster shot and they say, wow. Sometimes it lasts for a day or two, but it doesn't last long. Again, do the math. I like to say, for Mr. Risk, put down the number of all the people who had bad reactions. You just look in your area. They post it. You can find how many people have had side effects. Put that number there. How many shots have been given? Just do the math. And you'll see, oh, if they've given 7 million shots and only one person has died, it's 1 out of 7 million. It's not you, it's 1 out of 7 million. I was asked by Naomi about testing. Testing. Why? The reason is the vaccines aren't enough. If we're going to get out of this pandemic, we still need to test. And there are 2 types of tests. The first test extracts from your nose some specimen, and they're looking for that lovely RNA. That lovely RNA, they do a synthesis of it with some specific primers to see if you have active virus. This test is only going to be positive if there is active virus. The quick acting tests are not as reliable, but you can take them over and over, and they're reliable over each time you take them. Okay. Now, Naomi asked me, she said, you know, I really felt bad. I felt horrible in January. I had a fever. I had all the symptoms that suggested that I had COVID, but I got better, but I really think that I might have had it. What should I do? In that case, you need to find out if you've got those little good green goobies in your body based upon the slide. They're not green inside you, but you need to find out if you have antibodies. The only way you can find out if you have antibodies is to do a blood test. And the blood test is exposed to the virus, which is an antigen, a protein. And if your blood changes this color, then they'll know that you do have antibodies to the COVID virus. So 2 tests. The 2 tests that are important, and everyone should want to know. Test yourself. Just go and find out, are you positive? Because you're not positive, you're positive before you're sick. If you're going to go somewhere or you're going to be with people that you want, even if you're wearing masks. See, one of the things that I see people do, they say, oh, we're going to get together. Oh, yeah, we're going to get together. We're going to get a test. And our negative test means we've got a passport to freedom here. We're all negative. We can just kiss, hug, sit next to each other, breathe on each other, drink after each other, whatever. Yet, no, no. No, 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 as Luther Vandross would say. No, no, no. A negative test doesn't mean that you don't have COVID, because it could be too early to turn positive. The viral level must elevate. And in addition, even with the vaccines, we're going to have to wear, yes, oui d'accord, mask. The vaccines do not protect, the vaccines, well, okay, let me erase a part of that. The Moderna vaccine decreases the amount, the level of virus in the nasal pharyngeal area, meaning that it seems that the Moderna vaccine has an extra benefit by decreasing the level of virus in the body. Now, they haven't explained, they're looking at it, why that happens. That has not been proven with the Pfizer vaccine. But even so, a little virus is still virus enough. We'll have to mask up, hand wash, physical distance until there's, at the top, I told you, herd immunity. When we get to herd immunity, 250 to 275,000 million people who are protected, then we can go back to a more normal life. But let me give you some benefits that we've done so far. Now, this is really exciting because there's not been that many colds this season. In fact, record low. There's not been that many influenza this season, and this is globally. France, the United States, just like, who's got the flu? There's not been a lot of gastroenteritis. Oh, no, no, no. I wonder why. People are washing their hands. People are wiping down surfaces. People are doing what your mother always would tell you to do. Go wash your hands. Wipe it down. Wash your hands. Wash your hands. It's public health. Public health has done more to reduce death and disability than any intervention of any kind ever in the history of medicine. Simple public health of cleanliness, simple public health of nutrition, exercise, water, temperance, T-A, air, rest, trust in divine power. We have to have bookends to protect ourselves. Yes, we need the vaccine, but we have to do the rest. We have to mask up. We have to eat properly because your immune system, those white blood cells do not like sugar. You give them a dose of sugar, they just sort of say, taking a break today. I think you're going to have to ward it off by yourself. Sugar makes your white blood cells lazy. And finally, go back to my lovely slides that I worked on. Test, treat. I really wanted to show you this. It's the video France, Geste Barrière, Naomi, because it was a cute little thing they showed as a publicity for Christmas in France.
Oui, tout à fait. Ça va, ma chérie? Le temps qu'il en rendait. Il en parle tout le temps et d'ailleurs, il a rendu. Et plein de
Continuons de prendre soin les uns des autres. Pour les fêtes, restons prudents. Besoin d'aide? 0800 130 000, appel gratuit, ou plus d'informations sur gouvernement.fr. Ceci est un message du ministère des Solidarités et de la Santé.
Little children have been the public health experts around the world. Schools have less than 0.1% transmission of the virus in France. These little children, just like my grandchildren, they follow and tell you what to do. Too close. Wash your hands. These little children have really demonstrated how powerful it is to follow simple directions. The Bible says, except ye be a little child, you will not enter the kingdom. Well, I'm going to tell you this. Except ye, if you're a little kid, I'll revise it. If you're a little kid, you won't enter an emergency room. If you're not a little, well, you know what the meaning is. Be a little kid so you don't get into the emergency room. That's the most important part. So right now, I'm going to leave it open for you to ask me questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Willis. What an enlightening presentation. I've been very, I always say educated, and I work in healthcare. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to put together a very informative presentation. We do have a number of questions. As a quick reminder, there is a survey link in the chat. If you want to just take a moment now to click into the chat icon at the very bottom of your screen, there is at the very top of the chat box, there is a link to a survey that we will be having you fill out shortly. So let me go to the first question, Dr. Willis. So the first question is, should you take the vaccine even if you are under medications for mental health? Would there be any contraindications, any side effects from, you know, the medication for mental health?
No, none at all. But check with your physician. You wouldn't be, again, these vaccines are just vaccines. They don't have any sort of miracle or anything in them. They don't have anything that's going to disrupt or interfere with anything in the blood with respect to a drug that you're taking for hypertension, a drug you're taking for heart disease, a drug that you're taking for cholesterol. The vaccine is focused on your immune system. It's focused on developing the antibodies that will protect you if you become exposed to the virus.
Thank you. So you talked about 4 different types of vaccines, and there's a question around the mRNA vaccine. And I think it's probably more of a statement, but I guess the question is, could you expound a little bit more on the pros and cons of the different types of vaccines? It sounds as if, the person is saying, it sounds as if the mRNA vaccine would be more favorable.
It looks so far based upon the data, but we're still waiting for the Johnson & Johnson, and we're still waiting for some of the other vaccines. And those won't be ready until the end of the year. Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca will probably be coming out in the next couple of months. Those two vaccines don't have as high an efficacy rate as the other vaccines, the MMR vaccines, like the Pfizer and the Moderna. The difference for me, between the Pfizer and the Moderna, besides the storage challenges, is that the results that Moderna has suggested. 2 things that they've just reported in the last week. Lower levels helps to decrease the levels of the virus. And 2, it seems that the immunity lasts a little bit longer than the Pfizer vaccine. So instead of like 3 to 4 to 6 months, it seems that the Moderna vaccine is lasting a lot longer than the other MMR vaccines. I really can't speak to some of the other vaccines until we really see their published data. I don't like to speak about something that I haven't read the actual report. The New England Journal has some new information about the Johnson & Johnson, but that's still a little bit too preliminary for me. I want the study to come to the end. I want it to be peer reviewed, and then I can talk about it because I wasn't on the panel and I need to read it for myself. But I do feel confident with regard to the 2 mRNA, the messenger RNA vaccines. I'm pretty confident in those vaccines. The other thing that's kind of nifty with this sort of innovation is that if the vaccine mutates to the point where if the virus mutates, the spike, those little spiky spikes, if they mutate, the messenger RNA can be reprogrammed. Because it's a program. They write a program to program the RNA message. It's the email, goes in the cytoplasm. Once it's taken up, like Snapchat, gone.
And do you expect the AstraZeneca, I saw you on your chart that the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines were available to the United States. Would you expect the AstraZeneca vaccine to also be available internationally and in the United States? Okay.
In fact, the United States government bought more of the AstraZeneca than it did of the messenger RNA. It bought a lot of dosages of the Astra. Why? Number one, cost, because it's based upon technology that's been known for a while. Second, the storage requirements for this vaccine are negligible. It's the same for the MMR, the measles, mumps, and rubella, for the influenza vaccine. So the AstraZeneca, even the Johnson & Johnson, are easier to store, to keep. There's less problems of the vaccine going bad because they didn't keep it in the refrigerator or at the lowest of temperature. So the vaccines that are going to be coming after this messenger RNA are also, I believe, good vaccines.
Okay.
But let's wait for the data to really come out.
Sure. We have just a couple more questions, and we probably can't take all of them, but there is another question about whether or not the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, will need to be taken on a yearly basis like the flu shot. So will we have to take a yearly booster shot like the flu shot?
Maybe, probably. I can't say definitively, but there has been discussion that because this virus may be with us, that it probably will be a part of the vaccine regimen globally. And in fact, a lot of countries, you won't be able to enter a country if you've not been vaccinated and protected.
And then I think just two questions here. What type of COVID test is the most accurate with results and diagnosis? And I'm going to put two questions in one. And do we have a choice as to which version of vaccine we get? So what type of what type of test is the most accurate? And do we have a choice?
The most accurate test is the PCR test, not the rapid one, but the one that takes a few days. The antibody test is accurate also because it's a blood test, just like you take a glucose test. What was the third question?
It was a question around the version of vaccine. Do we have a choice in the version of vaccine? I'm not sure you'd be able to answer that, being in France.
In France, we don't even have a choice. It's whatever's available, and I think it's the same in the U.S. Whatever's available. It's very important in the United States to speak directly with your doctor and to indicate to your physician that you want this, you want to have the vaccine, and to find out from your physician where it's being given. In France, they're designated vaccine centers. So we don't go to our doctor to get it or to the pharmacy, we go to the center in our area.
Mm-hmm. Last question for you. I know you talked about the social benefits and the risks of not being able to engage in certain social activities if we don't get the vaccine. Conversely, then, would it be correct to say that if we don't have the vaccine, we will not be able to take part in those activities in the future, i.e. the vaccine will become mandatory? Is that your expectation?
My expectation is that more and more businesses already are demanding that you be vaccinated. And private companies, especially in the United States, can make any rules they want with regard to the health of their employees. So I'm thinking that the vaccine is the quickest way and the safest, not just quick, safe